The Last of Us has been on everyone's mind lately because of the stellar HBO show that's been a huge hit for HBO and PlayStation. However, many people are forgetting that there was a Last of Us game shown off at last year's Summer Game Fest. In fact, Neil Druckmann had stated we were going to see more of the game in 2023, and a lot of the gaming sphere believes that that game just might end up coming out this year. Let's get into it. The big question around this Last of Us game is, what is it? A lot of people originally assumed that it was The Last of Us Factions, a mode from the original Last of Us on PS3 and PS4 that was just PvP and you kill each other. In fact, this game was originally supposed to launch with The Last of Us 2, which gave people another reason to believe that this was just going to be your basic run-of-the-mill multiplayer mode like the original Factions mode was. And I'm not saying Factions was bad, it was actually spectacular, I love it, some of my favorite multiplayer ever, but this new game, I'm going to call it The Last of Us Factions. I don't believe that's going to end up being the real name, but for this video, let's call it The Last of Us Factions. I think it's going to be so much more than people realize. A lot of people forget that Neil Druckmann confirmed that this Last of Us game is going to have a story, a cast of characters, and one of the biggest worlds that they've ever created. Let me play this little snippet for you.
This game is big.
Okay.
It's as big as any of our single-player games that we've done, and in some ways bigger. It's got a story. The way we're telling that story is very unique to this game. It's got a brand new cast of characters. It takes place at another place, another part of the United States.
It's like a city might be somewhat familiar, some people.
I'm sure our fans have already figured it out. And it's really cool.
So yeah, sounds really amazing. However, this is apparently going to be a live service game. In that same clip, Jeff Keighley actually ends up calling it a multiplayer live game, meaning live service, meaning this is going to be a game that is supported for a while. Now, what's the games that you think of whenever you hear live service? For me, I think of Destiny, I think of The Division, I think of these very mass multiplayer online shooter-based games that sort of lack on story overall. Destiny's sort of starting to nail it lately. I think the latest expansion was a letdown, but I'm not much of a Destiny guy, but I've heard they've gotten better at that. But story is usually an afterthought when it comes to these style of games. So the fact that he says that there's a cast of characters and a story, and it's being led by some great talent that worked on Uncharted and The Last of Us, gives me a lot of hope that this might be a service game that actually somehow infuses great story elements into the world, whatever that world is. Because like I said, everyone assumed this is just going to be a PvP game, like the original Factions was in The Last of Us. But no, to me, they're making it sound like this is going to end up being a more so open world game, where they introduce characters in this open world and you can play with your friends. Or is it just friend? Because you might remember, not long ago, Neil Druckmann gave a statement about The Last of Us Factions, saying that you'll be able to enjoy it with a friend. Just one friend, singular. So that has me thinking, does The Last of Us Factions have more than one component when it comes to the online structure of it? Is it going to have a narrative-driven co-op experience where you just play with one other friend? Like a Joel and Ellie situation, but you actually get to control Ellie. Obviously not those characters, but a similar situation where there's two people on an adventure and one of them is being played by your friend. Because to me, that sounds awesome. We do not get enough co-op games. Games like It Takes Two and Resident Evil 5, and even the Portal 2 co-op mode, they're pretty few and far between in terms of games being structured around playing with one other person, having level design and puzzles, and even story moments structured around having just one friend with you. It's actually pretty rare, especially in today's AAA space. Co-op games are not rare, obviously, but if The Last of Us Factions does in fact have some type of story campaign mode where it's just you and one other person, my God, that's the dream. That is the dream. I don't think The Last of Us should just be Joel and Ellie's story. I think it could be a bunch of different things. Honestly, the TV show, while I do think it's really, really good, I would have preferred if it was a whole nother story that took place in The Last of Us universe. And we actually did get bits and pieces of that in the show, which was really cool and like my favorite part. So yeah, I do wish that this did have some type of co-op campaign story situation. Do I think that's how it's gonna be? Not really. What I envision The Last of Us Factions is like, and it kind of scares me because I don't love this franchise, but I think it's gonna be something like The Division, an open world game where you have reasons to go explore the open world and you get loot and whatever, and it has its service game elements like live events that happen that you want to tune into and unlock something or something like that. And I should have mentioned at the beginning of this video, but I totally forgot, and you might not know who I am, but I'm a guy who's not into live service games. That new Suicide Squad trailer gave me all the red flags, and I really hope The Last of Us Factions doesn't end up doing the same. I actually made a full video about Suicide Squad, so if you want to check that out, I will link it at the end of this video. So yeah, while the thought of The Last of Us getting into the live service realm is sort of lame and scary, I don't think every live service game is inherently terrible. It's until we actually get to see them, see how they're structured, and what the gameplay loop is like, that's when we can fully judge them. While I wasn't the biggest fan of The Last of Us 2's story, they do nail world building, and as for combat, I love The Last of Us combat, so while this is a live service game, I'm still cautiously optimistic. I'm just hoping it doesn't fall into all the trappings of live service games. Hopefully it doesn't get crazy with emotes and stuff like Fortnite and all that crap. I want it to stay serious. This is the Last of Us universe, and I really hope they treat it as such, even though it's a live service game. But yeah, I do envision The Division when it comes to this game. However, this is Naughty Dog, so they love story. So I'm not saying they can't pull off a Division-style game. If it is like The Division, I think they're going to infuse story into it so greatly. Yes, apparently Destiny is starting to do well with story stuff, but originally, I heard it was terrible. I don't know firsthand, but I know that Anthem was terrible with story, The Division's terrible with story, all these types of games, they're so bad with story. But since Naughty Dog is taking a whack at it, I think they can pull it off. I still don't really know how it could be structured. Like he said, there's a cast of characters and a main story. So are they really going to lean into the live service element and you get bits and pieces of the story as real life time goes on and they drop these events on certain dates? Or is this something that you can finish up and then they have other live service elements that you can jump into, like the Destiny raids, how you can play through the campaign and you got a bunch of other stuff to do on the side. Either way, like I said, my ultimate dream would be to have a co-op campaign that you play through with one friend that's story-driven, it's cinematic, it's amazing, has open world sections that are also in like the main multiplayer mode, and then on top of that, you have the live service stuff that has live events, you can play with more than one person, and it's not as story-focused. The stuff that someone like me could ignore if they wanted to, and if they just wanted to play whatever this story stuff is in this brand new Naughty Dog game. And the one final thing I want to mention is the date. Is it coming out this year? Because Neil Druckmann did say that they're going to talk about it a lot more in 2023. So the question is will it make it out before the end of the year? My hope is yes, because apparently Sony wants to put out like 10 live service games before 2026. So I'm assuming that this is one of them, and I'm hoping that's going to be a big deal and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm just really hoping it doesn't have all of the weird quirks that a lot of live service games have when it comes to just lacking story or having spongy enemies. Having spongy enemies in this universe would not make sense at all. So please, I hope they don't go the Division route with that. Add some more armor onto people or something. Make it make sense in this universe. But yeah, that's pretty much all my thoughts. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Where is The Last of Us Factions, if that's even what we're calling it? I don't think that's what it's going to be called. I think it's going to have its own dedicated name, like The Last of Us Show Me the Money. I can't think of anything. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. If you didn't, hit that thumbs down. And as always, if you want to hear more of my thoughts, go check out our podcast called Spot Dodge. It's available on all podcast platforms, and we stream it every single Tuesday night here on this channel. Thanks a lot. I will talk to you guys later. See ya.